Hello everyone and anyone watching this video right now. Now, if you couldn't tell from my last video, I am what they call an artist, maybe even a drawer. I like to draw, paint, and get involved in almost all things involving a pencil, paper, and basically all hobbies creative. I draw mainly though. Specifically, I do fan art, and I also draw either my own or others' cute little OCs doing cute little things, as you do, you know. Or basically just drawing what comes to my mind. I also knit, and I also want to get into crochet at some point, but knitting and crochet is not what we're talking about here. So this originally wasn't a video idea I was working on. I was working on a completely different video idea until something came up that inspired me to make this one, basically. This is a question that if you're an artist, you'll have been asked this before, or if you're just getting into art, you'll be asked this at some point. What inspired you to get into art? Normally, I would say a go-to answer that comes to mind immediately and leave it at that. However, when I really thought about this question, the answer isn't as black and white as I sometimes thought it to be. Because nothing in this world can ever be so black and white and simple, right? I could just talk about the thing that first gave me the idea to get into art and get into animation and all that, but as you'll see later on in this video, just because I got the idea to draw and animate doesn't mean that I knew where to go from there. What does that mean? Well, I'll explain it as I talk about the things that inspired me into getting into art. Before I start, I would like to make note that I did try to label these inspirations in chronological order of when they came into my life and thus inspired me, but my memory is kind of bad, so I may not have exact dates or ages of when I first came across these things or people, but I do have general time spans of when they came into the picture, which is the best that is going to exist because I don't have much to help me figure that out besides like the occasional yearbook that I come across. But anyways, without further ado, let's get started. So even if I wasn't going to list these all in chronological order and instead listed them by biggest inspo and went down, Avatar: The Last Airbender would still be the first, because it was the thing that first introduced me to the idea of, hey, I want to get into art and animation. Also, whenever people ask me the question of what got you into art, my go-to answer is always Avatar: The Last Airbender. I first started watching Avatar: The Last Airbender back in elementary school. I was big on Nickelodeon and especially Nicktoons, where Avatar: The Last Airbender would air for me. I don't exactly remember how I first started watching the show because this was a very long time ago, and also, as I said before, my bad memory. But I'm pretty sure I just started watching it because I was a kid and kids like cartoons, you know? However, the more I got into the show, the more I realized that it was way different from other shows that I watched. Shows like SpongeBob and Fairly OddParents were shows that I was still a huge fan of, but Avatar: The Last Airbender was the thing that really pulled me into its world and characters. The reason why, I'm pretty sure, was because it was a very different show to others that I have watched. The main thing that caught my eye was the style. It wasn't a very cartoony style in the same sense that Tom and Jerry or SpongeBob was. It was the kind of anime style that I hadn't seen before at this time. Keep in mind also, I never knew what anime was at that point when I was in elementary school. I never watched Pokemon because while I was a fan of the card game back then, I never knew it was a show until way later on in life. Same with other animes that people more than likely watched when they were kids or came on channels that I didn't have knowledge of or didn't want to watch when I was a kid. The first intro to anime-styled animation would more than likely lead back to Avatar: The Last Airbender, which sounds crazy given the whole is Avatar: The Last Airbender anime or not debate people will have every so often. The term anime has changed throughout the years since there have been shows that have challenged what we had previously thought anime was. From shows with completely different styles of art and animation to shows that don't even really originate in Japan. The term anime has definitely been challenged and changed from what we all and what I once knew of the term years ago. Not that that's a bad thing at all. Words change over time as well as medias within a specific umbrella. That's just bound to happen. It's just how life is. It's the same with music and other things as well. Also, the word anime just means animation. So, to answer the question, is Avatar: The Last Airbender an anime or cartoon? My answer, yes. Anyways, to get back onto topic, because I was never introduced to anime back then, it really got me invested and intrigued because of how the show looked. Not to mention how amazing the animation and art in the show was. It's such a good looking show at some points, and it can be really pretty, and that's what caught my eye. And when I was watching it, every time it came on, I was thinking to myself, wow, I really want to draw that. However, a problem came up. I didn't know where to start. Yeah, I knew I wanted to draw what I saw in Avatar: The Last Airbender, mainly the characters in the anime style, but I never knew where to go from there. Avatar: The Last Airbender planted the seed of what I wanted to get into, art and animation, but it didn't help give me a map on how to get there, or even help me with my first baby steps. That wouldn't come until a bit later on. I was going to talk about this in a different video idea I had. However, when I was thinking back on this more, I realized that these had way more of an effect on me and my art than I originally knew. More specifically, it gave me some of the groundwork to start going in the direction I wanted, at least a little bit. So, as I mentioned before, I was big on Nicktoons, where I would watch Avatar: The Last Airbender. There was this thing that Nicktoons did as one of their buffers from show to advertisement, and it's what I call their how to draw bumpers. Basically, they were these videos from either well-known artists or artists from well-known shows teaching you how to draw your favorite cartoon characters from Nickelodeon shows. Butch Hartman taught you how to draw characters like Timmy Turner, Cosmo, and even Danny Phantom. There were other videos where people taught you how to draw other cartoon characters as well. However, the main ones that caught my eye were videos teaching you how to draw Avatar: The Last Airbender characters from artists from the show. There were episodes on how to draw Aang, Katara, and even Appa. I remember paying specific attention to those episodes in particular because it gave me the answers that I had questions to on how to draw like people do on the show. So every time an Avatar: The Last Airbender how to draw bumper came on, I would have pencil and pepper and fuck. So every time an Avatar: The Last Airbender how to draw bumper came on, I'd have pencil and paper ready to replicate how they drew those characters so I could do it myself. The problem with it, though, was this was live TV. I couldn't rewind and go back if I got stuck on something. Not just that, but the bumpers like that were randomized. I'd be looking forward to a bumper on how to draw Aang, but then it would be the SpongeBob one. So because of that, I don't remember if I ever actually completed a drawing from one of those bumpers, but honestly, I was just so amazed that they would show them at all. This, in my mind, was people making Avatar: The Last Airbender, my favorite show, back then and even now, giving me all their secrets on how they draw their show and characters. In my head, I was like, oh my gosh, these artists of a show I love are giving their secrets out like this? Like, those bumpers ended up meaning so much to me as a kid because of that. Being able to learn from the people that made my favorite show into reality with just pencil and paper was so cool to me, and it pushed me forward into continuing the path I was on. Before I continue on to the next inspiration, there was one specific bumper I do want to mention because it was what first gave me the push to want to actually animate. There was this bumper where Butch Hartman taught you how to animate a bouncing ball using post-it notes. Now, we all, as artists, know of this practice to animate a bouncing ball. However, as a kid, this was new news to me. So whenever I'd see that, I'd try to replicate it as good as I could. Watching Butch Hartman draw it out and explain it, I do remember being able to actually draw one of those when given the bumper. Was it good? I don't remember, but it couldn't have been too bad given it was just a bouncing ball on post-it notes, and they were pretty descriptive on how to get to whatever step you need to get to. That bumper helped me find out that you can make your drawings move. The one thing I never knew when watching Avatar: The Last Airbender or any cartoon. Overall, these bumpers were able to push me somewhat into getting onto the path I wanted to get on and gave me some of the blueprints on what to follow going into other things later on in life. These bumpers were my how to draw videos you'd find on YouTube back before I even watched YouTube. They really got me thinking, yes, art and animating. I want to do more of this. However, all I had was what I watched on Avatar: The Last Airbender and those bumpers. I didn't really have anything else helping me to draw. This wouldn't be until way later on when I would find resources to help me on this journey. Let's talk about that. Now, I don't know if these books existed in the elementary schools I went to, because I was focused on books like The Berenstain Bears, Olivia, or Chicka Chicka Boom Boom. But when I got into middle school, I started to actually gain some brain cells. I say some loosely, but I put more thought into what I wanted to do than I did in elementary school. So basically, around middle school, I explored a bit with the stuff that I checked out in libraries. I moved quite a bit and ended up in a couple of middle schools with different kinds of books, which I'll also get onto later on. But right now I'm talking about the how to draw blank books. I first found them in middle school, and when I realized I could find these types of things, they were something I consistently checked out of libraries in school. What they were basically books on a specific subject matter, and they would give you tutorials on how to draw them. There are books on how to draw flowers, humans, I'm sure, and different kinds of animals. I specifically remember checking out a book about how to draw rats and mice. I used the book to draw a rat, and I ended up showing the image to my mom, who thought it was really good. This was middle school me, however, so I never really got into drawing beforehand. I had thoughts, but I never put that focus on too much into drawing, let alone showing them to others. That's why this was more prevalent in my mind, I feel. I don't remember how good the drawing of the rat was, but it couldn't be too awful, given the book was pretty good at leading you through the process, kind of like the bouncing ball tutorial I talked about in the last point, in the last inspiration. I also remember getting a how to draw book on cats, but unfortunately I didn't end up getting into warrior cats at the same time. I feel like if I did so and ended up drawing fan art of warrior cats, things would have taken a significant turn. Who knows what we all lost? Oh well, RIP. Another big memory I have of how to draw books is something that leads to other inspirations later on. When I was in middle school, I found a how to draw manga book in a Walmart one time, and I ended up getting it. I think around this time I was aware of manga and anime and got into it a bit, but that's to be talked about later on. So I bought this how to draw manga book, and I ended up using it so often. Using it to help me get to where I wanted to be with drawing people in the style that I wanted. Those drawings may have been left to be desired though, because again, this is middle school me we're talking about. Even more interesting about this book is that I actually still have it. I'll show an image of it here. It's crazy how I actually still have it through all these years and that it didn't end up getting destroyed completely or completely tossed out. It doesn't look the best and it is definitely not in the best shape, but honestly, I'm just surprised that it's still here. I also have a how to draw anime book that I think I got as a gift. I got it in my recent years, probably like 2 or 3 years ago. I'll use it as a reference every so often, but I mainly just Google my references or make them myself with either online posable bodies or I just use pictures of myself. I do that a lot when drawing hands. I'll pose and take a picture of my hand in the position that I want it to be in and use that as reference for drawing hands because drawing hands is hard enough. I need to make it easier somehow. But I would say that these books very much helped me with my art journey and setting me onto it, not just giving me a little push or a template like past inspirations did. They were still very helpful because without them, I wouldn't even know where to start. But these books did help me gain even more of a grasp on how to draw certain things, especially the how to draw manga and anime books I'd either find in libraries or just buy them myself. This was before online tutorials, and even when I found online tutorials on how to draw sites, I still use those books to help. Plus, it's one of the only books that I got from libraries, so, you know. This may be an odd addition for some people watching this video, but I wouldn't be truthful if I made this video without their participation in influencing my style in art that still exists to this day. To give some context, because I feel like it's needed, back in middle school, I had gotten into Minecraft YouTubers of the early 2010s. People like Skydoes Minecraft, Ick, Deadlocks, basically everyone from Team Crafted, as well as people like Captain Sparkles and Stampy Longhead. And I was so very invested into the content and fan base at the time, because of course I would. Anyways, I would watch and read fan-made content of my favorite YouTubers at the time, so much that I ended up stumbling upon an artist in the community that I'd argue was pretty well known. If you were around at the time, you probably know who this is. This artist went by Taxi Cab on YouTube, where they would post speed paints of their fan art of Minecraft YouTubers at the time. I'll show some of the pieces that I can find here, and when I do, it might kickstart some people's brains into remembering who they were. Or it just might make people more confused, who knows. I watched a bunch of their speed paints, and I thought that their art was so good back then. Not just the style, but also because it was digital art. You see, in middle school, I didn't know too much on how to make digital art. Didn't know what to use, what apps to use or anything, until I was introduced to digital art by Taxi Cab's art. All of my art at that point was just traditional, but when I saw their art, I wanted so bad to make digital art. Not just that, but also to make speed paints because I thought they always looked so cool. Although, it took me an embarrassing amount of time to realize that the footage was sped up and not just someone drawing at light speed, because I definitely tried that and thought to myself, wow, how the hell are they able to do that? But anyways, their art got me introduced to speed paints and digital art. They also introduced me to Vocaloid because they would use Vocaloid songs in their speed paints, but not to be talked about right now. My first start into digital art was MS Paint drawings in my computer class when I got into high school. I had a friend in that class who, after we got done with our work, we would indulge in fan-made content of things like creepypastas while I also drew on MS Paint. I always made time to draw on MS Paint in that class because it was the closest I got to be able to do digital art. That was until about a year or two later when I got my first Wacom tablet and was able to actually figure out digital art. Not completely, just the apps I can use and stuff. Obviously, my digital art back then wasn't the best, but I definitely tried. I even posted some speed paints on my YouTube channel at the time, which is the YouTube channel here. I privated them a while ago, but they definitely did exist. Nowadays, I just use my iPad and Procreate, and my style on digital had changed significantly since I first started digital art. I'm honestly really proud of where I've gotten to now with my digital art, and thanks to Taxicab, I was able to get some sort of idea into digital art. Taxicab unfortunately took down their channel and videos on YouTube, either by their own hand or from YouTube, I don't really know, but their art is still around. You can still find it on Google. Alright, hi, editing me here. So I did some digging, and I tried to see if I could find any screenshots of their old accounts so that I could find some artwork of theirs that was still up, but I just had to really dig into the internet to find. And I couldn't find any of that. I did find some screenshots of their old DeviantArt account, which kind of shows who this person was and maybe will jog some memory of some people who knew of them on DeviantArt at the time. I did find a journal by somebody else asking where Taxicab went and why their accounts, their YouTube and their Twitter were deleted. And there were apparently some rumors about how, because Taxicab was 15 at the time in 2015 or 16, and their parents didn't like it, and so they took internet privileges away from them and deleted their accounts off the internet and all that hullabaloo. That's a rumor though, and it hasn't been verified by the actual person who went through it or anyone close by. So take that with the smallest, the tiniest, the littlest bit of a grain of salt that you can find in your cupboard, you know? Got it. Cool. Glad we're all on the same page, because even though I found that, I am not gonna push that as if it's true, because I don't know if it is. There's nothing substantial to go along with that. So again, take that with a grain of salt. However, kind of fair given the fact that she was a 15-year-old, so, you know. And I couldn't find any records of, like, them switching accounts or them having an account now as an adult, because they would be an adult right now. I couldn't find any accounts of them now, and even if I could, I'm not gonna, like, share that because I don't want people harassing her for artwork that she made, like, years ago, and, or telling her to, hey, make more art and all that shit. Just, if you do find her, which I doubt, leave her the fuck be, you know? But anyways, I couldn't find anything else. I couldn't find any other artwork besides the two pieces that I did find, and even one of them I'm a bit suspect on,
I don't even know if it's actually hers, but I did find somebody else on Amino who did say that that was her artwork, and I'm just gonna say that it possibly is. I don't know for a fact though. And I'm still upset that despite the fact that I could find more art pieces by them months ago. I was working on this video. I started working on this video August around then, and I did find art pieces by them, but my dumbass didn't save them, so I just thought that I could find them later on. Apparently not. Anyways, back to the regularly scheduled nuisance that is me. Hi.
If Taxicab does happen to come across this video, I doubt it, but if that happens, I just want to let you know how much you have inspired so many people, including me, into getting into digital art. I hope you're doing well, and thank you for making those fan pieces back then. Even if you find them cringe nowadays, which every artist is destined for at some point to find their old art cringy, it still inspired a lot of people. Not just me. A lot of other people were inspired, and, you know, I gotta give props. These are inspirations that, while they did contribute to my style and artwork back in middle school, they weren't as big as maybe some of the others that I had talked about previously. But they were still essential to what I would draw and what my style became. Make no mistake on that. But I also have less to talk on these compared to others that I've talked about previously. I mentioned how back in middle school, one of the kinds of books that I would get would be how to draw books. The other kinds of books that I got was a lot of graphic novels. I read so many graphic novels, and I also used some of them as reference material to learn from. Graphic novels I read back then were Amulet, Maximum Ride, and My Boyfriend is a Monster. The last two especially, because those styles were something that I looked for into wanting to draw for my own art one day. I got into anime and manga around the end of middle school and continued into high school. Not many of the schools that I went to had manga on their shelves, but I did go to the bookstore about every weekend in middle school. I used that time to read a bunch of manga and sometimes even purchase them as well. Manga that I bought and still keep on my shelf to this day were Death Note and Black Butler mainly, because those were my firsts when it came into getting into anime and manga. I don't have all the books on either of those series because I realized how much of a commitment manga can be financially. But then again, I was also the kid who bought art supplies frequently. I think the manga thing just kind of fell from my mind after some time. You know, dealing with school and life can be tiresome. But the manga that I bought was also used as reference material, like the graphic novels were too. I would take things from styles that I was a fan of and use it in my own art, which almost never looked good from what it looked like in the manga, but you know, I tried. I don't have many big high school inspirations like I did back in elementary or middle school. I think it's because by high school, I knew exactly what I wanted to do and get into. While some things were still iffy, I knew more than back then, specifically because of the experiences I had in years previous to my art journey. So let's get into some of my high school honorable mentions when it comes to inspiration for my art. Again, like I mentioned previously, these mentions do not mean any less to me than the others. I just already was inspired by so much previously. I also don't have much to say on these as well, like how I mentioned before in my middle school honorable mentions. I mentioned it before, but I got into anime and manga in middle school, and it carried on into high school, and even to this day. I still watch anime nowadays. Back in high school, I used to watch it a bunch whenever I had the time. Watching anime and certain shows was able to help me get into drawing in an anime style that I wanted to get into. While yes, the drawings probably weren't the best because we are talking about high school me this time, I still tried to use those aspects of anime art into my own drawings. That inspiration still exists to this day in my current art. High school was also the first I saw of manga and how to draw anime books on bookshelves as well. Some schools had it, not all, but it was very nifty having them nonetheless. I don't think I ever checked out any manga from the high school libraries because they almost always never had the first book, so I just skipped it and just continued on my anime streak. The title of this inspiration sounds a bit ominous, but I'll explain. So for a lot of my school years, I never really had any friends. That also sounds really sad, but let me elaborate. In middle and high school, I didn't have too many friends I would draw with or do anything like that with. That was until freshman year of high school. I made friends with someone who also had an interest in anime and stuff. We found that out because I sat next to her on the bus and she commented on my Pikachu shirt I wore, and I still have that shirt to this day. Since then, we became friends. She was also an artist. She would draw and show me some of the drawings that she had made, and I would do the same. There was one specific thing that she would draw on a regular basis, however. She made this little comic thing of her self-insert in Undertale, which is something I really enjoyed and encouraged. So every time she made a new comic, she would show me. It was like reading the latest manga in my eyes at the time. It was so much fun how we would be able to talk to each other about the comic she would make as well as other art. This moment was a time where I was inspired to get into comics and such. Granted, I already got inspired by that from the manga that I bought, but it was the connection with my friend that made this moment very special in my eyes, and it still lives in my head to this day. I think about that moment fondly. Because of that, it kept me going to wanting to get into, hopefully one day, making my own webcomics. Now, I also want to sidetrack a bit and talk about self-insert x Canon stuff because I see it being mentioned before and criticized, and also I'm not gonna have another time to talk about it, and it relates to the previous entry, so I thought, why not? I do not have an issue at all when it comes to people who want to make a self-insert to ship with their fictional characters. I mean, of course I wouldn't. I grew up in places online where people would ship their OCs with creepypasta characters or other characters similar. Now, I never made a self-insert to ship with a canon character in my art, but that was because I was coming up with just random concepts back then, but I was also dealing with other things. But guaranteed, I would have done something like that if I knew I could draw that back then. I feel like us artists have a moment in our lives where we realize after a while of drawing, damn, I can draw anything. And that didn't happen for me until late in life. I would like to draw something like that at some point, however. Don't know with who or anything, but it just seems fun. Freedom in art is what makes it so fun, so criticizing and limiting people who are drawing things that don't hurt others and aren't illegal just seems very controlling. Mind you, when I say all this, I'm not saying random adults can make ship art of themselves with non-aged up minor characters. That stuff is what crosses the line, because drawing obvious minors in sexual situations is illegal. So if someone is just shipping themselves with their favorite character and they are both of age or similar age, then it's not really a problem in my eyes. This topic does have some nuances to it, but I'm not going to dig too deep into it. In general, people who ship their OCs with canon characters is not a problem for me. In fact, I actually encourage it. It can be really cool to see how creative people can be, toying with canon stories and characters to mesh in with their own. I don't personally understand the criticism when it comes to this. Some people see it as cringy, which isn't a valid criticism. What you find cringy is subjective, and just because it's cringy doesn't mean it's an objective bad. It just means you don't like it. If that's the case, then you can just ignore it. Also, a lot of the times when I see people calling someone shipping their OC with a canon character cringy, it almost always is targeted against the kid, which is not cool. Let kids be kids and let them ship their OCs with their favorites. Stop telling kids to not do things that aren't hurting anyone just cause you find it cringy. Cause guaranteed you have also done some cringy stuff in your past. It doesn't make you a bad person, but it's not okay for people to police kids on what they do. As long as what they are doing isn't going to cause them harm, what's the problem in that? Maybe I just feel strongly about it because nowadays in the art community, you see it very often when a minor gets attacked because of their art style or what they choose to draw that, again, isn't actively hurting anybody and isn't illegal or whatever. It just irritates me in that way whenever I see it, you know? Another criticism I could see is if the person writing an OC X canon story has become way too possessive over the canon character. By that, I don't mean obsessive in the same way that one person on TikTok has a whole room shrine dedicated to Randy Marsh. I mean sending messages to people who claim to like the character as well and sending them hate and threats to them. If that's the case, then it's best to just leave those people be, block them, and if things get really serious to the level of death threats or stuff similar, report them. Toxicity like that shouldn't be something encouraged. The best you can do in a situation like that is to stoke the flames before they get out of control. Sending hate back won't help the situation either. It's best to just let them know how dangerous their behavior is and to just leave them be. But even when I talk about these criticisms, they're either very extreme or not even a criticism. So even with these, I don't even see a problem with OCX canon. I say just let people ship their self-insert with their favorite character however they please, if it is in a safe environment, not illegal, and actively not hurting anyone. Overall, OCX canon isn't a problem, and any criticism is either invalid or the most extreme case, so just overall, not valid. But yeah, ship your OCs with your favorite character. I have no problem with it. But anyways, moving past the slight tangent, and to wrap everything up, I think this is all of the major inspirations in my life that I can think of in regards to where my art journey has taken me. Honestly, remembering some of these sent me so far back into nostalgia, and this video only came about because I remembered about how much the Nicktoons How to Draw bumpers impacted me. It all started from Avatar: The Last Airbender 2, which is something that I could have never expected as a kid. How would I have known that I would have gotten so much into art that it would lead me here? And even though I still have a long way to go, I'm sure kid me would have been pretty proud at how far my art style has gone over the years and my development into being an artist. I do wonder how other people's art journeys went and how it all started, so if you are an artist of any kind, let me know how your art journey started. It could have been from a simple TV show like mine, maybe you saw a photo that really impacted you, or a video game that you ended up really enjoying that got you started. Maybe even other things like an art piece that stood out to you, or a YouTube video that switched your brain on to the idea of getting into art. If it's anything like that and more, then let me know in the comments below. Also, regarding my last video, I didn't expect it to get very far, but when I went from 15 to 29 subscribers because of it, it was like, wow, what? Huh? I had moments where I look back on it and I'm just like, how? What? It just, I didn't expect it to get too far. But if you are one of those people that saw my last video and was like, yes, this random artist talking about an art topic, I want to see more, and ended up subscribing or just watching the video, thank you so much. I almost didn't end up making that video, but I did because it was something I wanted to speak on. and plus learning how to edit was pretty fun. I'm still very proud of that spaghetti edit to this day. There were some things about the video I would have changed, but I also wanted to get it done before July ends, but hopefully with this video it ended up at least a little bit better. I don't know what my next video will be on, because I do have multiple ideas in the works still. Also, like I said last time, don't know when it will come out. But I do want to thank you all for the support regardless. I have been having fun making these longer videos and just talking my stuff. Seeing how creative I can get with like talking about things that interest me and with video editing and all that stuff is pretty fun, and I do like to make longer form content besides, you know, the TikToks I make every so often, so it's just really interesting, you know? Again, like I mentioned previously, I like to explore when it comes to creative hobbies in general, so this definitely ticks off one of the boxes as something I really like to do. This has definitely been the best way for me to talk about whatever's on my mind, you know? Anyways, I gotta head out now. Thank you all for listening, or watching, or both. I will see you all later. Bye.